who are weary, heavy laden, I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Be seated. Well, it's good to see who comes to church the day after the 4th of July. Well done. Independence Day was yesterday, of course, and it makes it a gift that you're here. I wasn't really sure who was going to show up and not still be out celebrating our nation's 250th birthday. That's because July 4th is a fun holiday. It really is. You get family, you get friends, you get spectacles in the air, you get great food, grilled food, which is the best sort of food, at least if you're Eric Long. And beyond that, I think it is important, with all of the anxieties of the age, to still take time and honor and celebrate the ideals put forth in that declaration that remain a North Star for human dignity and freedom. And who doesn't love freedom? I mean, despite our many challenges, it's a tremendous blessing to live in a place where we can believe and do and act and be and speak out and work toward a better tomorrow, as our consciences and our hearts dictate. And yet I will note that somebody forgot to tell the lectionary editors that we just celebrated Independence Day. Because the scriptures that we just heard were all about bondage, if you were paying attention. They were not about independence. And that makes them highly incongruent with this day. Talks of yokes and burdens and captivity, enslavement to sin. That's what was in the Bible today, which pairs with exactly nothing on a 4th of July menu. Paul gets us started, as Paul often does, talking about the bondage of slavery to sin. He says this line that sticks with you. I do not do what I want to do, but the very thing I hate, that's what I do. Now that's a terrible sort of bondage if you think about it. And yet, let's be honest, who amongst us doesn't know that bondage? Or at least has known it at some point in our past. Know how something inside of us keeps us from being who we really know that we're called to be. Who hasn't thought Paul's words in an argument that got out of control? With words that were said that should never be said to a spouse or a child or a parent or a friend? Who hasn't thought exactly what Paul said after a poor decision in adolescence? Or let's be honest, adulthood? Who doesn't know the captivity to something within us at times that keeps us from being who we know we are supposed to be? Jesus continues the fun, talking about a different sort of captivity, and that's the captivity of a life devoid of direction, the entrapment that is a life of pointlessness, living life but not even thinking about why you're living your life, just living for no particular reason or purpose or meaning. And who, at least in seasons of life, hasn't known these restraints as well? What it's like to be bound up by indecision or apathy, the loss of direction at times, purpose, times of waking up and putting one foot in front of the other, but not living life for a particular reason that you can figure out. Jesus compares folks doing this with bored kids sitting around a marketplace. They don't know what they want. They don't know what to do. When they're given music to dance to, they won't dance. When someone comes along and says, well, it's sad and it's time to mourn, well, they won't mourn, and that's because they don't know what to do with life. They just exist. And so, as he points out, when John the Baptist was sent by God and told the world is not as it should be, everybody goes, well, I don't like him. He's far too severe and stern and mean. In other words, John said to mourn about the world, and they would not. And then Jesus shows up, the Son of God, and it's time to have a party. And they go, well, I don't really like him either. He plays around too much. He's a rowdy that hangs out with the wrong crowd. In other words, Jesus shows up and it's time to dance, but nobody wants to dance. John said mourn, they did not. Jesus says dance, they won't, because they don't know what to do with life. They just live life for living life's sake. And without direction and meaning, it turns out that we as human beings can lose the answer pretty quick to the why of life, becoming like creatures that live deep in caves that have eyes, but they no longer work because of lack of use. When we live long enough, day-to-day lives that do not have meaning, we lose that sort of sight. We begin to not even look for it anymore, which is a terribly sad but common sort of bondage, the bondage of living life for no reason at all, and examples of this so-called life abound in this world. We even make it into entertainment with the Real Housewives of wherever, or keeping up with the whatever that family is that I don't care to keep up with. And into this universe of potential entrapment, Jesus says, if you find yourself shackled by sin or indecision or misdirection or whatever it is that wishes to get a claim on you but is unworthy of you, why don't you instead be bound to me? Bound to my purpose and meaning and direction for your life, which will surely build a life finally worthy of the word life. And so again, even though all of this talk of bondage sounds really odd after Independence Day, sadly, I think that we have to admit that it rings true, that we people are sometimes overly good at getting bound up in things and stuff. The question is, bound up by what? Or maybe a more palatable way to say all of this is, we will give our lives to something. You're going to give your life to something. The question is, what will you give your life to? Will you be a slave to fashion? Or just your work? Bound to your image? Your appetites and desires, to keeping up with the Joneses, or just getting up day to day, doing nothing more than just making a mortgage? See, unfortunately, we can get tied up in things, and knowing this, Jesus asks, again, be bound to me, knowing in this world that pharaohs abound. And that's why we love Jesus' word so much. Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. I will refresh you. Because that's us. We're weary. Our burdens can be heavy. We want to find a place to rest. But then it's weird, because there's that next statement that he gives. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I don't know about you, but one thing sounds good, Jesus offering rest. One sounds a little less good, take my yoke upon you. I mean, think about a yoke. You ever seen a yoke? And I don't mean eggs. Yokes are big, bulky things that are used to bind oxen together to pull a plow. In other words, yokes are not hammocks. As helpful as they are for hard work, they're mechanisms of work. They're not mechanisms of rest and relaxation. You put two oxes' head in there, and they're yoked together. Where one goes, the other goes. Where one pulls, the other pulls. They pull their workload together, and yet, in so doing that, the hard work gets easier. Because with yokes, two are working as one. The burden becomes lighter, but only because one ox is bound to another. And so it is today that Jesus is saying, in this life, you're almost certainly going to take on a yoke. You're going to attach yourself, your life, to something. You'll be bound up in that way. And yet, if you are willing to make Jesus your yoke mate, that heavy burden, it becomes a great deal lighter. We're going to pull our lives in some direction. Sometimes we don't even know what direction that is, but there we go. And some yoke mates will seek to take us where we should not go. Some will even try to own us, lead us nowhere in particular, and thus nowhere good. And yet today we learn that there is one yoke mate who will share the burden in a way that makes us finally on a path to freedom in this world, because we're moving somewhere that has meaning. Some years ago, I was helping a friend move, and he had a 6-year-old son. And this 6-year-old son really wanted to help. And he really was not helpful. But I felt for this little boy as I saw him trying to lift this heavy piece of furniture on his own, as though he could ever lift that piece of furniture on his own. And so I jumped in and grabbed 2 armfuls of that piece of furniture, and I helped this child with his overwhelming burden, and together we lifted that item and carried it to where it was supposed to go. Now, in reality, of course, he offered very little. If he had let go, I don't think I probably would have noticed. But if I had let go, well, he would have been crushed. But because I was there together, we moved it along to the right destination until we could finally lay that heavy burden down. Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. Come unto me, all whose lives have lost purpose and meaning. Come unto me. If you're overburdened by things unworthy of your life, Jesus says this to us, and then he bends down and takes up the bulk of the weight and binds it to himself, and then pulls us along on a path to a good direction that leads to freedom. And whereas we would be crushed going it alone, Jesus lifts our burdens as one bound to us. And that, my friends, is what true freedom on this side of heaven looks like. It's the best kind, for it alone is the abundant life kind. It's kind of like a true, eternal Independence Day. Thank God. Amen.